and again, I'll let Mr. Glass address this in greater detail, but there are, as I understand it, medical reasons regarding the danger or the harm that can befall animals if they are spayed or neutered too early or at the wrong time in their lives. Practically then, the pet stores would have to make a judgment, presumably in consultation with vets, about when each specific dog or cat should undergo these procedures. They would have to go out of pocket, apparently, to have that done, so that when a customer came in and said, all right, I want to buy Grover, you would say, oh good, he's already been spayed or neutered, he costs $1,000, and here's another $500 for the procedure that we had to put him through, which may not be what the customer wants. To do it any other way would essentially result in a waiting period before you could buy your dog, because you would pick your dog, obviously, and then the pet store would have to say, all right, we're going to send him off to be spayed or neutered, and come back in a few days, and you'll have to pay for it. So it's unworkable. It's an extra cost. It, of course, takes away the choice of how to manage the animal, so to speak, from its owner. And again, I just want to bring to the board's attention the issue of the medical issue regarding how these procedures are carried out and when.
Not being a veterinarian, I will limit what I can share here. But what I can comfortably share is the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, does not support mandatory spay and neuter. The New York Society for New York Medical Veterinary Society does not support mandatory spay and neuter, and the ASPCA does not support mandatory spay and neuter. However, there's a different issue that we're addressing here. It's not spay and neuter, it's neonatal sterilization. It's taking an infant puppy, a puppy that's 8 to 10 weeks, is typically 8 to 10 to 12 weeks when it's sold at a pet store, and it's mandating that that puppy be neutered, that puppy be sterilized. There are studies, and again, I'm not qualified to speak on the studies, but there are more and more studies coming out to show that is not healthy and that is not a good thing. You'll hear overwhelming testimony from shelters of the success in spay and neuter. It's a different model. It's not consistently being done to these infant puppies. So therefore, by default, pet stores won't be able to sell the puppies. It's just not a healthy thing to do, and it's unhealthy. Thank you.
Finally, with respect to the next section, 153-4, these deal with the size of the enclosures for the animals, and 153-5 deals with the exercise requirements for the animals. The stores have no particular objection to these types of requirements, except to note for the board that they are already under enhanced or stricter regulations that were imposed on them about a year ago by Nassau County. As I understand it, the Nassau County rules require them to go well beyond what the federal regulations had previously imposed, federal or state, I don't remember exactly which one, but a higher jurisdiction. The county of Nassau has already gone beyond this. They're already required to comply with rules very similar to those outlined here. So I would just ask the board to look carefully, and we'll supply some more information about the Nassau County law. Look carefully at the Nassau County law to make sure that this isn't simply restating or going beyond what is already beyond the minimal requirements of the federal and state government. Do you have any comments on that issue? Finally, in closing, a couple of other considerations for the board to take into mind. The town of Hempstead is obviously a very large geographic jurisdiction, but as you know, you don't have jurisdiction over the entire geographic area of the township. This would mean that pet stores in the unincorporated areas could potentially be operating under far stricter regulations than, say, a pet store in an incorporated village. That's putting these stores potentially at a significant competitive disadvantage, and it's doing very little to remedy whatever problems there may be or perceived to be, because if you can't get your dog in, Baldwin, you can drive to Rockland Center and go to a pet store and buy it there under the traditional model, which is regulated again by every jurisdiction from Nassau County on up. So I think that the town should look carefully at the implications for the businesses within the town's jurisdiction. Is it solving a problem, or is it simply putting town of Hempstead pet stores at a competitive disadvantage to those in incorporated villages, or of course those in Oyster Bay or North Hempstead or Queens? People will simply go to those other areas and purchase from the traditional pet store. I've already mentioned that Nassau County has enacted regulations dealing with this that are quite strict. They are new, and we believe they are perfectly adequate to deal with any issues related to the animals' health and welfare. And as I've already mentioned, this industry is quite heavily regulated by the United States Department of Agriculture. So in closing, I would just say that these are your friendly neighborhood pet stores. They've existed for years without problems. Obviously, hundreds and hundreds of town residents have purchased animals from these stores. None of the 3 stores that I represent have ever had any kind of a problem with any governmental jurisdiction regarding the maltreatment and mistreatment of these animals. They are not responsible for whatever the population of pit bulls may be in the town of Hempstead Pet Shelter. So I would hope the board would consider all these factors and just ask itself exactly what problem would be remedied by a bill such as this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Glass. We have a number of residents who wish to be heard on this proposed legislation. Patty O'Miller. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Patty Miller. I live on 4th Street in East Meadow. I am here today to support Kate Murray's local law, Chapter 153, as a volunteer at a local shelter and assorted rescues. Taking this very important step will set an important precedent for many other towns and cities. Kate Murray will be forging a forward-thinking plan to stop the ongoing abuse and mismanagement of dog stores and the handling and care of these animals. So many of these pups end up in our local shelters and rescues. We are overwhelmed by the sheer number of the intakes here in the town of Hempstead. You name the breed, and it is here. It is heartbreaking. The best move was the mandatory spay and neuter. The town of Hempstead does it very well. It is a success. Financially, these animals become a burden on the taxpayer and families that are emotionally moved into buying these animals. The animals become victims over and over again. It is a crime. There are cages in our town shelter, in the hallways, full of purebreds, not just pit bulls. They should go and walk into the shelter and see the animals that are there. We have Yorkies, and we have Shepherds, and we have Rotties, and we have Chihuahuas. We have Japanese Jindo, we have Shiba Inus, we have plenty of unit Westies, you name the dogs, and they're there. So their information must be coming from something other than the actual walking through our shelter. Stopping this tide is a laudable goal. We need to support good local control to accomplish making a dent in the amount of animals brought into our locality. I have never seen a breeder come and retrieve any of the animals aforementioned. Only the rescue groups and our local town rescue coordinators and adoption specialists. Having a mandated spay and neuter on this bill is wonderful. There are hundreds and hundreds of animals that we see. I walk dogs, I care for them, and I see so many issues. This is an amazing, amazing step that will make town of Hempstead go down with so many animal advocates as making a real difference in the excess and overpopulation of our local dogs and cats. And also the cats, selling a cat just boggles my mind. We have currently 50 to 80 cats in foster. Little tiny kittens, beautiful. Some of them are purebreds as well. And I have never seen a breed come down and help with that either. So thank you very much for your time.
Is it Carrie, is it Michelle or Michael? Michael, please come forward. Good morning. If you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Michael, and I live in Blue Point, New York. First, I want to thank everyone for putting this on the agenda this morning. And I would like to say that not only do I volunteer at my local shelter, I have been protesting faithfully for the past 5 months at one of the pet dealers in Suffolk County. One can't emphasize enough the importance of those early weeks in a puppy's life, when both environment and human interaction shape a dog's future. Puppy socialization with proper introductions to new sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and handling are critical to a happy socialized dog. The sensitive time for socialization is approximately 4 to 12 weeks of age, and puppies between the ages of 8 to 10 weeks often experience a fear period. Any negative life experiences that occur during this period can make a lasting impression for the rest of the dog's life. This is one of the many reasons why puppies bred in commercial breeding facilities and sold over the internet or in pet stores tend to have so many behavioral issues. Unfortunately, the common experience for these puppies consists of impersonal rearing in a socially deprived environment, with limited handling by humans, followed by premature separation from their mother and then traumatic trip to the pet store, all occurring during a time when positive experiences are critical. Commercial breeding facilities don't provide this. Real, reputable breeders screen dogs before breeding them to minimize the risk for serious, expensive, painful abnormalities such as hip dysplasia, cardiac diseases, and blindness. Part of what you pay a reputable breeder for is their expertise, medical screening, and proper socialization of their pups. It's been proven time and time again that many dogs sold online or in pet stores are unhealthy, unsocialized, often have genetic defects, and inbred. Wholesale breeding of puppies only guarantees the quality of merchandise will be poor. Large commercial dog breeders do not and cannot screen their breeding stock for genetic inherited problems. Therefore, as a result, many puppies end up discarded at shelters when problems arise. It makes no sense whatsoever to continue manufacturing dogs and cats when over 5 million are being euthanized a year for the lack of space. I've dedicated the last 5 months photographing puppy mill deliveries in semi-trucks from the Midwest, over 20 hours away, pulled USDA license numbers for brokers and breeders which have been traced back to puppy mills with deplorable conditions, pulled inspection reports for such breeders including their multiple PO boxes and aliases and horrific violations, yet are still allowed to stay in business. And more recently, I engaged with a consumer who came forward a few days ago with her DNA results she paid for to prove her dog was a Lapika shit. Excuse me. Lhasa Apso Pekingese Shih Tzu, when the store owner swore it was a purebred Shih Tzu. I stand here today to ask you to enact a new law, Chapter 153, mandating the spaying and neutering of cats and dogs, mandating animal disclosures have at least 25 square feet for each animal on display, and at least 100 square feet of space for each animal on premises, mandating the fire alarms and sprinklers in all pet shops, and mandating proof that puppies aren't coming from commercial breeders, which is a euphemism for puppy mills. I thank you for your time. Puppies aren't products.
Good morning. If you could share your name and address for the record, please.
Jennifer Brugge, 2269 Sycamore Place, Merritt, New York. I'm here today to not only urge the board, but to urge them to pass the pet store law, but to thank you, Kate Murray, for your willingness to get this accomplished in an effort to protect puppy mill dogs and cats. I'd also like to point out that for the first time in 5 years, this government has tapped into its greatest resources and called on the knowledgeable, dedicated advocates who have each diligently and passionately tried to convince the board to recognize and find preventative, humane solutions to the overpopulation and suffering of our animals. When the government and advocates can work together so cooperatively and achieve the progress seen in the content of this law, that is a great success in itself. Please take this giant step forward by passing the law, and let this be an example of the good things to come for the dogs and cats of Hempstead and beyond. If passed, Hempstead can once again lead the way and be the first to acknowledge and resolve the issue of puppy mill abuse and set the groundwork for other municipalities and villages to do their part in putting an end to it. Thank you.
Georgia Prunty? Good morning. You can share your name and address?
Okay, I'm not near as knowledgeable as a lot of these people, but I've been doing a lot of research. And I can tell you this is a wonderful law. If it passes, it's a great step forward, okay? These dogs that are being sold in these stores like just objects, are coming from puppy mills, which are horrendous. And if you ever, any of you ladies and gentlemen up there have ever gone online and maybe just take a look at what these represent, it's horrible. Anyway, this is a great step forward, and municipalities across the country are going even further, but you gotta start somewhere. They're banning the sale of puppies and kittens from pet stores. The state of Arizona has completely stopped it unless they come from a rescue or a shelter, and that's an entire state. So all I can say is, go out there, this is a wonderful, wonderful start, okay? And I just pray to God, I really do, for the sake of these animals and these people who are buying these, not knowing about puppy mills and the horror that's there, and these horrible conditions that they're coming from, being thrown into a semi-truck and then dropped in the pet store, waiting for somebody to come in and plunk down $800, and it's horrible. So if you can start somewhere, I would ask you, please.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Diane. Good morning.
Diane Madden, 243 Cherry Place, East Meadow.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have to start with saying that when you can make me happy, my standards are so high, it's a great thing. And Kate Murray, I thank you for recognizing the puppy mill problem and for working with us to find some kind of compromise that will do exactly what you wanted to do and keep these puppy mill puppies out of Hempstead. And this is a great start.
If I could interrupt, a number of people have singled me out. Let me assure everybody, every one of my colleagues is 150% on board as well.
You know, I think I turned to that because when you spoke about the zoning, which I do credit you for, nearly a year ago with Joe Riley, town attorney, he said you were very interested in doing that, and it's very much along the lines with that. So I know that a year ago you wanted to see something happen to benefit and protect these animals. So I do apologize, I do credit the board, we count on them to pass this. What this law does, ultimately, it does reduce the amount of animals being surrendered or received by the shelter long-term. It is a long-term plan, but it's a plan. It's better than having nothing in place. And I'd like you to keep in mind that when the pet dog dealers showed up with the Nassau County law, which was very poor and not effective, they were all cheering. They're not here today. They should be here cheering today if they're interested in protecting animals. The spay-neuter, as far as that goes, it has been successfully done. It's something the shelter has done right all these years, for many years. Spay-neutering these young animals to, again, address the overpopulation of animals. It's been effective, it works, and in addition to that, what will benefit a lot regarding pet stores is that it will put an end to the continued genetic disorders that not just start at puppy mills, but because these pet stores are selling these dogs with hip dysplasia and all kinds of genetic disorders, spay-neutering that will stop that. When you think back on when we were kids, we all got our animals, at least I can speak for myself, from a reputable breeder, and we knew the background, we knew the parents of the dogs, we knew where they were coming from, or if your neighbor had a hoops litter, that's where these dogs came from. And I think by looking at the overpopulation now, society has made a mistake in the way that we have to undo this. And this law is a way of doing that. It's a way of undoing the damage that's been done, as well as protecting the animals and the consumers. So I do urge you to pass this. I can't thank you enough for considering it. I hope you do it. I stand behind it 100%. If amendments are made, I hope it's to further your goal and the town's goal to protect animals. And again, thank you. Let's get this done.
Elizabeth Stein. Good morning.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Murray, if you would bear with me for just 2 minutes, because what I would like to do before I do have something written, but before I get to that, I would like to respond to some of the comments that were made initially by the two gentlemen who began this portion. And I'm sorry, I don't recall their names. But I think, I'm not going to say that it was disingenuous on their parts, but I think it's a little telling that they wanted to adjourn this meeting because they didn't have an opportunity to thoroughly review the bill, but yet they seem to have quite a number of very specific comments with respect to the bill. So I think and also having worked with Town Attorney Rob on the various versions, and I thank you, and Heather, I know you're here, and I can't tell you enough how wonderful they were to work with. The drafts have not really varied that significantly, so whatever they're seeing today is quite similar to the various drafts that we've been going through. So I do believe that they have had an ample opportunity to review this. And just going to a few of their points. As far as the 100 square feet requirement going forward, and the comment was made that it does not apply to the health and welfare of the animals. I would have to disagree with that because the comment was made that these very small mom and pop stores actually have a lot of animals, which I would have to say is not good. A small store should not be warehousing puppies and kittens. It cannot be in the best interest of that animal to be warehoused. So I think that going forward, I was hoping that the requirement would be applicable to existing pet stores. It's not, I can appreciate that, but I do believe that going forward, this is something that absolutely should be applied to any future pet stores. There's no reason that they should be warehousing puppies and kittens. As far as the spay-neuter requirement, the comment was made that the ASPCA does not support mandatory spay-neuter. This is not the typical mandatory spay-neuter. The ASPCA fully supported the spay-neuter provision in the New York City bill, as does the Humane Society of the United States. I'm sorry that Ryan Shapiro couldn't be here today. I know that he was sending comments to the board in support of this bill, in support of the spay-neuter provision, particularly in support of, if I could just have a few more minutes, the requirement that the pet stores not be able to source from brokers. I think what is being significantly overlooked is that the Class B brokers are not just transporters. They are, Supervisor Murphy, you look like you wanted to ask me a question. Oh, okay. What they do is they are drawing puppies from all different Class A breeders. They are warehousing them in the most abysmal of conditions, and there have been numerous exposés. And I have shared some of the information with Mr. Roth. I would be happy to share it with the town board as well, that the HSUS has done, particularly with respect to the Hunt Corporation and how they deal with the animals. I believe 75% of the animals that do end up in pet stores come from these brokers. It is a problem. A pet store the owner of a pet store should want to know where that puppy or kitten has come from. They should want to know the breeder that has been breeding that puppy or kitten. So I fully support the fact that there is that broker language, that the only place that a pet store in Hempstead would be able to source an animal from would be a Class A breeder that has not been subject to the very specific citations that are listed in the law. Let me just add that getting back to the Animal Welfare Act, which is the federal law that the gentleman did respond, that they were discussing. In fact, the Animal Welfare Act is the bare bones minimum of compliance for a breeder. Bare bones. If you go on the animal welfare site itself, on the USDA, it says that these are the minimum standards. Compliance with the Animal Welfare Act in no way guarantees that these puppies and kittens have been bred in a healthy and safe manner. On the contrary, the Animal Welfare Act does not have any bearing on the mother dogs that are being bred endlessly and mercilessly year after year and then being killed when they can no longer be bred. The Animal Welfare Act has nothing to do with that whatsoever. So saying that a breeder is in compliance with the Animal Welfare Act is really a smokescreen, and it is basically saying nothing. But unfortunately, it's the best that we can do under the circumstances. As far as the sprinkler systems, I'm going to wrap up. I think it is, again, disingenuous when these pet stores are selling puppies and kittens for thousands of dollars to say that they cannot afford to put in a sprinkler system. And in terms of the shelter, the animal shelters that are then the recipients of these puppies and kittens, nobody is suggesting that they're going directly from the pet store to the shelter. What we're saying is that they're being bought by unsuspecting consumers. These puppies particularly have congenital, behavioral, emotional, physical maladies. They are purchased for thousands of dollars, and then people have to pour thousands of dollars into these puppies and kittens, and that's why they're ending up in the animal shelters. So I applaud you. I'm sorry I took so much of your time. I still didn't cover everything that I wanted to. I look forward to working with Mr. Rowe on this in the future, and thank you very much.
Christine Alcation. Good morning.
My name is Christine Elton, and I live in Comac, New York, in Suffolk County. I've been very involved in this for many years. I started with the New York State bill to even get regulation, actual lack of local regulation. New York State was one of the only in the country that did not, like, specifically prohibited local regulation of pet dealers. So when people come up here and say, oh, we've never had a problem, our pet stores are good, it's because there was no regulation. It was only from New York State. New York State's Department of Ag and Markets is one woman named Anna Colon. She is responsible for every puppy mill and every pet dealer in the entire